Patrick Bean here at the OBA third town hall meeting. Speaking with Aguinaldo Medeiros, the chairman of the OBA party. Give me some of your thoughts on the reaction and the response to these past three town hall meetings.
Oh, I think the reaction has been fantastic. The numbers are not quite there where we thought they'd be, but then again, it's that time of year. There were several things going on in the city on Wednesday, for example, so that may have deterred, for example, our Wednesday town hall. But what's been fascinating is the commonalities from east to central to west, but also the differences. And folks have been very forthright and told us what our strengths are, what our weaknesses are. They've made recommendations, and what's even more important is that we do surveys prior to the presentation and subsequent to the presentation. And the dial actually moves. So once they actually get to see us and know us in person and understand what our vision and our values is and how we'd like to move the country forward, it actually turns out even more positive in the exit survey. So obviously what we have to offer is something that the folks have an appetite for.
Okay. What have been some of the most major points of concern, and how have you been able to relate and address the how to fix the what is broken issues?
Well, the concerns are usually the usual. People are concerned about healthcare costs, education, governance, and things like immigration reform has actually come up from time to time. We're not the government. And when I say we're not the government, we may have a vision for the country, but that vision may not exactly pan out, or at least in the timeline that we so choose. As an example, when the previous OBA, not the previous OBA, but when the OBA was government previously, they came in with a certain vision, and then they realized that months into their term, there was no money to even pay the civil servants. They had no choice but to borrow, unless they were going to say, hey, you 5,000 or 4,000 civil servants are going to stay home for 3 months. So that was a speed bump in their plan. Mm-hmm. So in terms of when we become the government, we have to first figure out, as our leader said early in the week, which cans have been kicked down the road, and of those that have been kicked down the road, which ones have the bombs. So notwithstanding the vision that we may have for the country, there are some realities in check. And we believe that there is a lot that has to be uncovered with the current administration that not even the average Bermudian is aware of.
Okay. You have been adamant that the OBA best represents the Bermuda racial demographic. You have highlighted that there's only one former member of the UBP within the MP of the OBA, compared to three former UBP members, two that were leaders, that are part of the PLP. Yet the stigma of you being a rebranding of the UBP exists. How do you disband that?
So I always address it like this. When the NLP was formed, and I remember that several decades ago, I was still a kid living in Bermuda, I believe, at the time, or off to college. I don't recall anybody saying, oh, they're just the PLP. When the FDM was formed, and just to this day I even hear echoes of it, well, where's the FDM? Maybe we need the FDM. I don't hear anybody saying that's just an extension of the PLP, when it's all PLP former PLP members. Now, the point that I made the other night when someone says, well, how do you get away, as you're asking, away from the UBP stigma? We have one current MP who came out of United Bermuda Party. Matter of fact, we don't even use those three letters in our headquarters. We make a point of not referring to them unless we're pressed to, depending on what historical context is being used in, because that is not us moving forward. Now, if the OBA disbanded tomorrow and they started a new party, ABC, XYZ, I can tell you with 99% confidence that, especially if it's a diverse party, folks will say, oh, they're just another UBP. Bermudians have to get out of this binary sort of thinking when it comes to politics. We, currently, the UBP, believe that we are representative of Bermuda because of our diversity, but not just an exterior diversity, not just in skin color. That's not. We're talking about talent, backgrounds, professional backgrounds, personal experience, folks that have lived on island, folks that have lived overseas. We truly feel that we represent Bermuda. I grew up, I'm from a blue-collar family. I grew up with labor. I don't have anything against labor per se, but I cannot honestly say that the PLP is representative of the whole island today. I can't say that versus that of the OBA, the current OBA.
Okay. Now, you have also been, in particular, a strong proponent of the tourism product. How do we get that moving along?
As I've said before, and I said tonight in our presentation, Bermuda was always known as a top meetings, incentives, conventions, and exhibitions destination, what we call MICE in the industry, acronym MICE. Now, it does not mean that we don't like honeymooners in June, does not mean that we don't like families in July and August. The reality is we are a seasonal destination to a degree. No one's going to go and swim on the beach today if you put them in a hotel for free. They're not going to come to Bermuda to hang out on the beach in this weather. They're going to go to the Caribbean. So we have to acknowledge the fact that we have a higher season and what we used to call the shoulder season. Now, I know we like to think that we're an all-around destination, and we are, but for the right clientele. The meetings and incentive market does not have the restrictions in terms of seasonality or climate and certain offerings like that. In matter of fact, I used to run the Canadian office for 10 of the 15 years that I worked there. In the 5 months of November to March, which Bermuda calls its shoulder season, so that's less than half the year, we used to get 60% of our business, more than half. So a Canadian doesn't have problems coming down here in November to March, but they would come because it was cheaper for them. Instead of staying in a hotel where they pay, back then, $400 a night, and only stay for 5 nights like the Americans did, they would stay in a hotel that only cost $200 a night and stay 8 to 10 nights. Now, those are facts. So, in short, they would stay in hotels that were half the price and stay twice as long. And they love being here in November to March, and we get 60% of our business. So my point is always match your product with the clientele that's best suited for that product. You cannot tell somebody in New York or Toronto to come to Bermuda in January when they go to the Caribbean and be in 30 degrees sunshine. Likewise, we have the same sort of Caribbean product in, say, April through November, but then the costs are reverse of the Caribbean. When ours are cheaper, theirs are more expensive. So if a group, a corporate group, MICE, meetings, incentives, conventions, conferences, and exhibition, have a choice. Do they go to Bermuda in March or do they go in April? And the costs in March are at least a third less than in April. When do you think they're going to come? So that's my point. We've got to match the product that we have, which the clientele seeks. Let's stop thinking that we can be an year-round destination to compete with the Caribbean. We can't. Those are the realities. So when we start raising our prices, what do the Caribbean do? They lower their prices because it becomes more competitive for them. Because now someone in New York or Toronto isn't dying to get out of that snow in April because it's not January any longer. So they're not willing to pay premium prices that they would have paid in the Caribbean in January. You see, so it's just common sense. So we've got to get back to basics, as our leader said. The basics meaning identify your product, identify your clientele, and match the two together.
Thank you, Mr. Medeiros. Now, speaking with Mr. Carl Neblett, approved candidate for constituency 36, that is Sands North. Okay, you were tasked with speaking about the traffic issue and the policing of Bermuda's roads and stuff and taking back the streets. What are your thoughts on how we can accomplish that, or how the OBA might accomplish that?
Well, the first thing that we'll have to do is we'll have to have that very serious meeting with the Bermuda Police Service, the Commissioner of Police, and the parties who are actually assigned to roads policing. Having that conversation is going to be extremely important because we're going to find out exactly why police officers aren't on the roads like they used to back 10, 15 years ago. That's one of the biggest issues. What I will say to that is we know for a fact, you know for a fact, the big issue is the budget. The police budget is constantly being slashed year in, year out, year in, year out. And of course, with that slashing of the budget comes the lack of police officers. At one point in time, you had maybe 2 to 3 intakes in 1 year. It wouldn't surprise me now that there's only maybe 1 intake a year locally. I'm not too sure whether the Bermuda Police Service has gone back overseas to recruit. I've heard some rumors saying that they've gone back overseas to recruit, but again, you had the intakes from overseas as well to supplement the local officers. We have a lack of police officers across the island. On top of that, you have stations that are closed.
Okay. Again, you are a former police officer, and you did talk about your times when you was up at Somerset, and Somerset was fully staffed,
Fully staffed,
and other precincts were fully staffed.
correct? That was St. George's. Somerset, we had the full complement and all the watches. We had a traffic section up here, a motorcycle section. We covered from Dockyard all the way to Cobbs Hill. The same rules applied in St. George's. Of course, as you know, the St. George's police station closed down because of some sick issues, and the station was moved to Southside. But that did not really change the dynamic for what was required. Now you only have one centralized station, which is Hamilton Police Station. You cannot service an island 21 square miles with one police station. Just, I don't even know who came up with the idea. It's ridiculous. You heard me say inside, I can leave Paget, drive to Somerset, leave Somerset, go to St. George's, leave St. George's, come back to Hamilton, and then back to Paget, and not see one police officer on the road in a space of an hour and 20 minutes, hour and 25 minutes. That's unheard of. Back when I was on the job, guaranteed if you weren't stopped at some point in time, at least 4 times between the time you left Dockyard and Cobbs Hill, something was wrong. The same rule applied in St. George's. And of course, forget about Hamilton, the central parishes. You don't see that anymore.
And what effect does this centralized methodology have on road users in particular?
Well, as you can clearly see, you can now see the behaviors that currently exist on the roads when it comes to speeding, all of the illegal driving, overtaking on the inside. Of course, nothing beats the incessant speeding and racing. I'll use Paget lights as a perfect example. On mornings now, you have, once those lights turn red coming from South Shore, everyone coming from Middle Road, they're now over on the right side of the road. I think here about 2 or 3 weeks ago, police officers were there for the first time in God knows how many years. Driving behavior / riding behavior on the island has gone through the roof. Nobody cares anymore. That's what it boils down to. Nobody cares.
Thank you, Mr. Neblett. Appreciate you guys. All right, take care.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thanks.